Comics, and today, Blade, issue number 6, and his new mentor, Dracula. That's right, people. Blade and his new mentor. Once his enemy, but now his mentor. Why? Because an evil has been unleashed on the earth. Blade was tricked into unleashing the Adana. For those of you who have been reading Blade, this super evil bitch who is trying to unleash evil and darkness on the world. Well, anyway, Blade thought that the key to her defeat was this kind of Luciferian sword. He helped Doctor Strange help them to acquire the sword. The sword was to no avail because she still gave Blade the business. Now, Blade realized, well, he had to go back to some roots. No pun intended there. And his vampiric roots, and learn from his former enemy and adversary in Dracula. And this is a really good issue. It's kind of a mini coming of age because, you know, many of us think of Blade as kind of already maxed out, right? You know, over 9,000, but Blade still, you know, he's immortal and has all the strengths of the vampires and none of their weaknesses. But keep in mind, folks, Blade has spent a lot of his life fighting the hunger, right? And with that hunger, one may say, comes an evil, right? Giving into the vampire strength and the nature. Well, Blade's about to learn that sometimes you got to give in to a little bit of the darkness if you can harness it. Blade number 6, let's go. Chernobyl, the iconic location of weird radioactive Russian fucking fallout monster hybrid creatures, and the new like vampire nation in Dracula's kingdom, I guess. So here we see a lot of blood slashing, and there's the iconic katana blade, Blade's hand, his wrist. Here he is just dismantling guards, if you will. They're just farming him, just loading up his fucking XP. Now, Dracula later mentions he can form like blood zombies or something like that. Basically, this is like Dracula's version of the X-Men's Danger Room, but except they're not in a room. They're in the snow somewhere in fucking Chernobyl. But basically, he's testing Blade right now to kind of see like what's broken, right? What needs to be tweaked? How do we make you stronger? How do we make you better? Because Blade thinks that there's room for improvement, which I guess you can argue there always is. But Blade feels like there's something missing. He feels like he can be stronger. And of course, he goes to the man that is known for being evil amongst the vampires himself, Dracula. Now, Dracula says enough. He's seen all that he needs to see, and he understands why Blade failed. Now, unbeknownst to Blade, he's about to learn, he gonna learn today, why in fact he failed during his encounters with the Adana, and possibly why he's failed in any other previous encounter where he needed a bit more strength, a bit more oomph, a bit more aggression, if you will. And Dracula is about to take Blade on a little trip down memory lane as they have some dialogue here. Blade basically accuses Dracula of being this unanimous, like, evil, and pretty much everyone thinks that he is. And Blade, they have some really good dialogue back and forth about Blade's nature, his humanity, or lack thereof. After a long, hard training session, Dracula thinks it's very fitting for them to have some bloody s'mores by a campfire. This is kind of a funny scene here. They're just at a campfire. And so basically, like I said, Blade tells Dracula, I didn't know you can summon blood zombies, which is pretty cool for training. And Dracula funnily responds, you never asked. And so basically Dracula's like, you know, why'd you seek me? And Blade's basically saying, you know, I need help stopping the Adana. Dracula's like, what do you think that I can teach you? And he goes, how to use evil against evil. This is where Dracula's kind of like, wait, so you think I'm evil? And Blade, I believe on the next panel, basically goes, dude, like everybody who has a fucking heartbeat thinks that Dracula is evil. Now, basically, Blade is skilled. He's talented. We all know that. We've all seen Wesley Snipes in all 3 Blades. But Blade is blind to something, right? He's blind to what's inside of him, his true potential, the evil, as Dracula points out here. And Blade says, to what? And he goes, basically, the evil inside of you, right? Because he wants to use evil against evil. And Dracula basically tells Blade that you're not going to be able to defeat this Adana until you embrace who you really are. And Blade, again, he spent the majority of his existence after being converted to fighting against the hunger, fighting against the evil within. And Blade accuses Dracula and saying, well, it probably wouldn't bother you if the Adana won and evil took over. Dracula says, it's wrong to assume things, Blade, and I actually love this world. And he's going to now take him down a stroll down memory lane. Dracula takes Blade inside of some kind of run-down silo or whatever this may be, and he's basically telling him that at one point in his life, when Dracula was a man, he actually fought for good. He fought for God, his religion, Christianity, things that he believed was good. And Dracula goes now to show Blade this suit of armor. Now, for those of you who have seen the movie Dracula Untold, this suit of armor will look very familiar to you. The gold there because it was worn by Vlad the Impaler, who later became Dracula in that movie universe. But it's very reminiscent of that armor. And he's basically telling Blade that I used to fight for the good fight for who they told us God was, and I fought in his name and did many things in his name. And this is really cool because we get this kind of historical flashback, if you will, into Dracula's life prior to being Count Dracula. As you see him here in battle, just kind of in Braveheart fashion there, fighting some kind of creatures of the night or leading these men on to slaughter. And there you see him raising up a wooden cross. So it's very, very interesting because it kind of follows that movie Dracula Untold, right? Where it was a man just trying to protect his family, but in this case, he seemed to be a soldier, right? Maybe in the Christian Crusades, I don't know. But Dracula's basically telling Blade that his problem is perspective. And things that are dark may not always be evil, and things that are light may not always be good. So this is very, very interesting that we get this kind of flashback to Dracula telling Blade about how he used to be, quote, good before everyone considered him evil, to further prove his point and to further drive home that Blade needs to embrace what's inside of him. So now, after the history lesson is over and the two men are face to face, Dracula tells Blade to destroy him. And Blade's kind of confused here, similarly to your professor yelling pop quiz right in the middle of class. Blade's kind of like, what? And Dracula's like, yeah, you've tried to destroy me before, so destroy me. Practice your anger. Okay, guys, again, the key here is anger. And Blade's like, oh, okay, you're trying to teach me something. I get it. I'll play along. Fine. So Blade rushes into the air right now. As you see the skill here, right? Blade, yes, he does have all the strengths of vampires because no regular ass human could just probably lunge themselves. He's got to be what? If Dracula's like 6 feet, Blade's like right at, I'm guessing 6 feet in the air, is from like one leap, ready to slash him, and he has no problem because I'm assuming he thinks Dracula's going to move. And look at this move. He does better than move. He dodges. He turns into fucking smoke, pewter dust, baby powder, and Blade, like all the momentum and weight and force, he just kind of skids, and then Dracula reappears, and he gives Blade the secret here, and he goes, stop thinking like a man, Blade. Now, many of you are like, well, why would he stop thinking like a man? It's because Blade is not a man. Blade's not been a man for a long, long time, ever since he grew them fangs, them canines, and he had this insatiable hunger to suck the blood out of people's necks and their bodies. He's not been a man for a very long time. And Dracula's like, try again, this time less boring. So again, Blade rushes into the air in dramatic cinematic fashion with his blade, no pun intended, hoisted behind him, ready to slash his adversary Dracula. And this time, Dracula turns into a bunch of bats, if you will, and kind of just flutters away, right? And Blade's just sitting there just with bats just flying around him, not knowing what the fuck to do now. But he's like, okay, all right, I got you. Now, basically, Dracula's telling him, if you think like a man, you're going to be limited to the options of a man. And this is a very, very important point because Dracula is trying to basically reintroduce Blade to really basic elementary shit about who he is and his nature. Is like, yes, you're a hybrid, but dude, you're far from a man, because like men aren't immortal. Like you're immortal. Like you're far from a man. You're more than just a man. So basically trying to get Blade to open up his mind to the possibilities of what his natural abilities can do, because he's been using this blade, hence his name, and different skills and techniques and strategies that normal men without his abilities would use. And Dracula's now trying to get him to stop using these things and finally accept who he is. And Dracula goes on to reiterate to Blade that if you think like a man, kind of like that Steve Harvey book or movie, think like a man, act like a woman, or act like a man, think like a woman, or some shit. But he basically says if you think like a man, you will have the limits of a man. And Blade just kind of replies, I am a man. And Dracula's like, okay, as he's in this wolf form now, which is pretty cool. I don't know what name for that power is, like an animorph or some shit. He went from smoke to a bat to a wolf now. But then he howls, kind of like Quentin Rampage Jackson. And he's basically saying, okay, well, you're never going to be a man again. But since you insist on believing you're a man, right? Blade is identifying as a man. Not going to go down that rabbit hole. Dracula's going to show him the limits of a man. Now Dracula's basically showing Blade a kind of a sample of his array of abilities, right? From the, the morphing into various animals and, making himself disintegrate into smoke. Kind of teasing Blade like you can have this. So he's summoning basically dead beings, right, from the floor, kind of like in Michael Jackson's Thriller, similarly to how he summoned blood zombies before for Blade to train with. And these zombies now, they're going to have at him. They're not going to hold back because Dracula wants to really drive this point home, even, at Blade's detriment. I love this scene. Very reminiscent of, Blade, Wesley Snipes in the movies. Blade just sitting there, just calm, the calm before the storm. He's ready as all combatants around him are just charging at him, just gnashing with teeth. And Blade's just sitting there calm, ready to strike. Similarly to a man, a very highly trained samurai or ninja or something like that. And Blade now is going to begin to attack these assailants that are coming at him. Dracula's undead, and we'll see what the results of this are. Now Blade begins to slash and hack. Slice! You know how hard you gotta swing to clever a man's head off in one blow? Blade knows. One down, 3 or 4 more to go. Now Blade just begins to hack and slash with ninjutsu Blade Daywalker-like precision. Decapitating here, like at an Oprah Winfrey taping. You get a decapitation, you get a decapitation, you get a decapitation. And Blade just passing out decapitations all over the place. But just like in a D-Generation X jumping in WWF television, the numbers game catch up. It's like Blade is Sting and the NWO is converging on him, ready to stomp on his ass. And that's exactly what we see here as the undead more and more summit, more come from out of the concrete in Chernobyl. And they're coming for Blade and they're getting him. This is where the limits of a man are shown. Until Blade gets angry at the conversion. Maybe he's claustrophobic. Whatever pissed Blade off, it worked because he just... No blade, no katana, just pure brute, supernatural, vampiric, hybrid human strength, and rips this undead's dude arm off. Now, even if he's dead, it takes a considerable, significant amount of superhuman strength to grab a limb and arm and just rip it off, okay? So Blade does that, and look at Dracula's expression. Not a smile, not a sad face, but I'd say a pleased, right? He says, okay. Now he's starting to understand, and we see here Blade just going through each panel here, tapping into the anger as if fucking Palpatine was right there, like, yes, give in to the dark side, Anakin. Let your anger fuel you, make you stronger. And it does. And Dracula says, was that a man? He's basically no. And he tells him, look, your sword's not always going to be able to save you. Sometimes you're going to have to tap into that rage, tap into being that monster. But the monster can be tamed. And he's basically telling him that you will have to be the evil you hate in order to beat the Adana and embrace its power. And that's simply something Blade has always been afraid of because it may be a point of no return for him, right? Blade doesn't want to become the very thing that he hates, but Dracula's telling him that's what you're going to have to do. Marcus Aurelius, right? The obstacle is the way. Now, Dracula is pleased with Blade's progress thus far, but he basically tells him, we just scratched the surface of the evil inside of you, Blade. Well, not evil, but the true nature inside of you. But it's not going to be enough to defeat the Adana, and frankly, it's going to take Dracula generations, too much time to fully awaken this, right? Similarly to, too bad they don't have a hyperbolic time chamber where they can go in for a day and come back and Blade's got like gold fucking Super Saiyan hair or something. So Dracula says, here's a way for us to accelerate you tapping into your nature. He takes a knife, a blade, no pun intended, and slices his wrist a bit just to draw enough blood to pour maybe about, maybe a quarter cup or so into a chalice. And he gives it to Blade to say, drink. And of course, we know Daywalker's going to reply no, because, right? I mean, just off the rip, some man cuts his wrist and pours it into a chalice and gives it to you. Of course, you're going to say no. But this is Dracula, and he's Blade. And Dracula goes on to explain, and he's saying, look, this isn't blood transfusion or anything. It's psychotherapy. Blade again says no. And he goes, this is no ruse. All it's going to do is show you your shadow and mind. Drink. It's not going to do what it is you think it's going to do. And he basically says, what? To receive your power at what price? And he goes, not my power. It will connect you with yours, as is our way. The price will be pain. So Dracula is saying, I'm not going to give you my power. This blood, yes, my blood, our power, Eric, is going to connect you to yours, since we've already began this process, and that's what it's going to do. So now we see Blade accepting the chalice, and he goes, well, since it's just pain, like, oh, that's it? I can do it. Takes it to the head, and drops the chalice. His blood is pouring out of his mouth, and just this intense pain and convulsions, contractions, probably like he's on his period. Well, not his period, but like a woman's on her period, and he's just in severe amount of pain. Now Blade's going through this metamorphosis, this transformation, as Dracula's blood courses through his veins, pulling his shadow and connecting it, tethering it to the man that he thought that he was. We see his eyes opening, and it's like Blade is becoming, this is the coming of age part that I was referring to. So Blade, we see his hand there, right? You can imagine the blood going in the veins, becoming more vascular, strong. Blade is becoming more awakened, almost as if his pineal gland is like the pineal gland for vampires, is just opening up for Blade. And he's ready. He's going through this painful transformation. But as they say, no pain, no gain, right? Skiba-diba. Blade lets out a yell like as if he were Goliath on the Gargoyles intro. Like, wow. And you see the city pan right there because the city could hear him. Cats were probably meowing. He probably set off some car alarms too. And Dracula says, now, show me evil. And Dracula does exactly what Blade does just pages ago, and he jumps 6 feet in the air effortlessly, coming at Blade. And you see his hair poofing up like that one guy from Back to the Future. But this is no future, this is the present. And Dracula's getting to strike down, and he says some name that I'm not going to try to pronounce or know, but it must be some kind of vampiric Latin name or something like that. And he's coming, descending down upon Blade. And what do we see? Poof. Woo! That's right. Blade does the very same poof, swish, disintegrate into smoke, puff, and mirrors trick, then reforms his body into solid mass that Dracula did to him moments ago. And now Dracula says, you feel the connection, the bond to shadow itself. Now you can smell every trace of soul that has passed through this place. Now you have the bloodline of eternity in your veins. And Dracula says, are you a man? And Blade says, not anymore. Dracula replies, well, you don't got to go home, but you got to get the fuck out of here. No, he basically tells him, I have done enough for you. Now leave my house, Daywalker. And this is an amazing panel, guys, because we see Blade standing triumphant, and he doesn't get to bask in the glory of this very long because he gets a call from someone very angry, someone who also deals with anger issues in Bruce Banner. And that is right, folks. You Hulk fans, that is right. We've got a Blade Hulk. I don't know if it's a team up, but definitely Blade Hulk is making an appearance in Blade issue number 7. And I am all for this. I love what Marvel Comics is currently doing with this current volume of the Hulk and Bruce Banner. The Hulk is he's angry, he's fed up, and he wants Banner gone. He wants to separate himself from Bruce Banner. And the longer now, when Banner transforms, the Hulk stays in there much longer now. Similarly to probably some other Hulk stories. This is my second volume of Hulk that I read. The last one being the first with, I believe, was it Ryan Ottley, I believe was the writer, or maybe Donny Cates. But this is going to be a good one, guys, because the current volume of Hulk is him dealing with monsters and demons and the supernatural and things like that. So this very much does tie in line with Blade. But Hulk is also going on kind of a world tour, making appearances in different comics as well, because let's face it, the Hulk isn't just for one team. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Did you really like this issue? Are you fans of Blade? Are you excited for the next issue where he teams up with the Hulk? Is he fighting the Hulk? I don't know. We're gonna have to see. According to this kind of preview here, well, the preview of the solicitation of the cover, looks like they might be fighting, but that's just a cover. This has been Trademark Comics. If you made it this far, thank you, and I hope you learned something more about this book and comics. And until next time, I am out.